Hi guys, Anne McKinnell here. Well, the new version of Aurora HDR 2019 is coming out on October the 4th, and I have myself a preview copy. I've been receiving questions from people asking what's in it and is it worth it to upgrade. So let's take a look at the differences between the 2018 and 2019 versions of Aurora, and hopefully that will help you decide whether it's worth it for you to upgrade right now. Okay, let's take a look. Okay, so what I have here is this image that I made in Arizona, and I had a beautiful sunset scene. As you can see though, the foreground was quite dark, so I decided to take some brackets so that I can combine these in Aurora and make an HDR image. So I have, I believe this is the 0 exposure, and I have a -1, a +1, and a +2. So what I'm going to do here is highlight all of these in Lightroom, and my plan is to open these up in Aurora HDR 2018, and then I'm also going to open them up in Aurora HDR 2019, and that way we can switch back and forth between the programs and see the difference between them. Now keep in mind that I have Lightroom, the two versions of Aurora, and the software that I'm using to make this video all open at the same time, so it's probably going to run a little slower than it normally would. But alright, I'm going to go File, Export with Preset, and I'm going to go here under Aurora HDR 2018, and I'm going to pick Open Original Images because these are raw files. Now, with photos that have clouds, I always choose the de-ghosting option because to me that's kind of a telltale sign of an HDR when you have those sort of jagged clouds because they moved in between the frames. So anytime I have clouds, I always go in here and I pick Ghost Reduction. And I'm going to pick the reference image to be the clouds that I really want, which are the darkest ones. So I'm going to go here and pick, this is the darkest one, and I am going to say highest to try to reduce that kind of jagged thing that goes on in the clouds that I don't like. Color denoise is fine. I'll pick alignment here just because I can. I was on a tripod, but it might help with the whole cloud situation too, so I'm going to go create HDR. And here we are. This is the base image that Aurora HDR 2018 has given me. So now I'm going to go back to Lightroom. I'll do the exact same thing, export with preset, and this time I'll open the source files in the 2019 version of Aurora. And I'll do the same thing. I'm going to click this little gear icon to get these other options. I'll choose Ghost Reduction, pick the darkest image, say highest. I'll do auto alignment too, and I'll go create HDR. I like all these little messages it's giving me up here telling me what's going on, what it's thinking about as it's making these HDR images. Okay, and here we are with the base image in Aurora 2019. So let's flip back and forth between these two so that you can see them. 2018, 2019. So as you can see, I'll go back again, the 2018 version is way oversaturated to me. Doesn't really look realistic at all. In the 2019 version, I think we're given a better place to start. So what you're seeing here, the difference so far, is their new Quantum HDR engine, which is essentially faster and smarter than the previous HDR engine. I think that with this version, we're seeing fewer burnt out colors, we're seeing fewer halos, and there's less noise. So right off the bat, we're starting in a better place. Now, can I get this result with Aurora 2018? Yes, I can. It just takes a little bit more effort. what I can do in this 2018 version is just, take down the saturation and the vibrance a little bit. So I'm going to take down the saturation, maybe not that much, say -17, something like that. I'll take down the vibrance a bit too. And now I go back to the 2019, 2018. So they're quite similar. So, yeah, the 2019 version is better right off the bat, but you can achieve the same results in the 2018 version. It just takes a little bit more work, that's all. The next thing I want to talk about is this HDR Enhance in the 2018 version has changed a little bit. Over here we have HDR Enhance, and if I bring this slider up, you'll see that it affects the, the HDR-ness of the image. Okay, so it can start looking really crunchy and contrasty. It depends on the kind of scene you have. If you have a city scene, this kind of stuff looks really good. If you have a landscape, it can really get overblown fast. So I'm going to put that back down, and you'll see the difference in the 2019 version. So here in the 2018 we have HDR Enhance, and down here we have HDR Structure and HDR Microstructure. So I'll flip over to the 2019 version. Now you'll see that HDR Enhance slider isn't here anymore, but we have a new section called HDR Enhance. It includes HDR Clarity, which I think is pretty much the same as HDR Enhance, and there is Structure and Microstructure. So this HDR Clarity pretty much does the same thing. I think it works, it's a little bit more subtle, so it feels like you have a bit more leeway with this slider than in the previous version. And then there is HDR Smart Structure. So it's a little bit different than the previous version. What it does is it kind of analyzes the scene and applies structure to the more detailed areas. So, I can just increase the HDR Smart Structure, and it's going to apply more of that to the foreground than it does to the sky. So I'll go ahead here and just add, a little bit of HDR Clarity, a little bit of Smart Structure. I like to add a little bit of Microstructure, and we can see what that looks like. Yeah, I don't think I like that HDR Clarity because of what happens in the sky there, so I'm just going to put that back. Okay, and flipping back over to the 2018 version, HDR Structure, do the same thing here, HDR Enhance, a little bit of Microstructure. So, it applies it to the entire image globally. So, yeah, with the 2019 version, it's smarter. So it can apply the HDR Structure only to the detailed areas of your photo and not to the whole thing. Can you achieve the same result in the 2018 version? Yes, you can. Let me just put these back the way they were. Okay, so if I want to apply HDR Structure only to the foreground, I can do it in the 2018 version. I just have to use layers. So, I do everything in here that I want to happen globally to the whole photo. But if I want to then go ahead and add a new layer, I'll add a new layer here. I'll go New Adjustment Layer. Okay, so now I can add a bunch of structure, and then I can add a mask to it by going up to this brush tool right beside Adjustment Layer 1. I'll click that brush, and in this case I'm going to pick the gradient mask. So I'm going to click to drag to draw the gradient, so I'll do that. And oops, that happened exactly the way I didn't want it to be. I dragged it in the wrong direction, so I'll just flip that around. Okay, I want this applying to the foreground and not to the sky. So there we go. So I can turn that layer off and back on again, and you can see that the structure is now only in the foreground. So yeah, with the 2019 version of the software, it's easier and it's faster to achieve the same result, but you can do it with the 2018 version. All right, I'm just going to click done. And let's go back over to the 2019 version of this software. And I do notice in this one that the foreground is a little bit darker. So this brings me to my next topic, which is down here, adjustable gradient. Okay, so this section was in the 2018 version. Let's go have a look at that. 2018 we're looking at. And here it was called top and bottom tuning. Okay, so notice here you have top, bottom, and you have exposure, contrast, vibrance, and warmth. Flip back over here to the 2019 version, and we have exposure, contrast, vibrance, and warmth, but now there's also highlights and shadows. So that's cool, because now I can say I want to reduce the highlights or increase the shadows just in the top, or just in the bottom. So that makes everything a lot easier too. In the previous version, if I wanted to do that, I can, but again, I would have to use layers. So this just, it was another tool that makes everything faster and easier. So here I can say, well, these shadows are a little darker than I would like them to be, but I don't want to affect the shadows in the sky. The sky is perfect. So I'll click bottom here, and I'll just click the shadows, increase the shadows in the bottom. Okay. So I think it just sort of puts this thing in the middle. Oh, where'd it go? There it is. So if you just click set orientation, you can drag this around to where you want to define the top and the bottom of your image to be. Okay, so in the 2018 version, my highlights and shadows are up here in the HDR basic panel. So if I make an adjustment to the shadows here, it's going to affect the entire image. So I just brought the shadows up, and if I turn that off and on again, well, it actually hasn't affected the sky that much because most of the shadows in this image were in the foreground. But I do find it handy to have that highlights and shadow sliders in the adjustable gradient. It just makes everything, again, quicker and easier in the new version of Aurora. But again, you can accomplish the same results in the 2018 version. You just have to use layers. So, layers are the great thing about Aurora. When Aurora first came out, it was just so impressive that it had these layers that allowed us to make these kinds of changes to only part of the image and, use the layer mask to define what parts of the image we want to change to show. So Aurora 2018 is still an awesome tool. Let's go back over here and look at the 2019 version. Again, I'm going to just, now that I've looked at the other one, I want to increase these shadows even more. Another thing that we have here in the 2019 version of the software is LUT mapping. So a LUT is a color profile, and some people are capable of making these themselves. The rest of us just acquire them or purchase them. Some of them come with the software, and it allows you to apply a color profile to your image. So, for example, there are some here that have come with it, and you can see how it just changes, the overall look and feel of the whole thing. So that's kind of neat. It's a feature that's in Lightroom now too. So that's, just an additional tool that you have at your disposal. Okay, well, to answer the original question, is it worth it? Well, first let me tell you what this costs. The pricing on Aurora HDR 2019, if you don't own it yet, it is $99. If you have a previous version and you want to upgrade, it's $59. Right now there's a pre-order going on, so you can get $10 off of those prices. So if you order it before October 4th, then you can upgrade for $49 or purchase it for $89. Now, is it worth it? Well, if you don't own any HDR software and you want to get into HDR, this is definitely, I feel, the best option that's out there. I much prefer this software to the other HDR software that's out there. It just has so many options, and the layers and layer masks are awesome. If you already own Aurora HDR 2018, is it worth it to upgrade? Well, it depends. I think that it's worth it if you do HDR a lot, because with the new HDR engine, everything is faster and it's easier, and just your whole workflow is going to be so much faster. If you're sort of new to HDR and you're not comfortable using layers, then you might want to do this upgrade too, because there's a lot of things now you can do without having to use layers. On the other hand, if you just finished buying the 2018 version of this software and you're okay with using layers, and this isn't something that you do all day every day, you might want to decide to stick with the 2018 version for a little while longer and maybe upgrade on the next version. I don't usually upgrade my software every single time a new version comes out, because it just isn't really cost effective to do that. It really depends on whether these are features that you think you need. So again, if you do a lot of HDR, it's definitely worth it, because it's going to speed up your whole workflow. And the images that are coming out of this are absolutely beautiful. So there you have it. I'll leave some links below in the description if you want to order this. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.